In today's class, we are going to learn about types of matrices. Had I given any type of matrix in the previous class? Not yet started, right? In today's class, we are going to discuss about types of matrices. Can you see it? Is it clear? Is it audible? Can you see what I have written over here? Okay. Types of matrices. There are nine types of matrices are there. The very first type is that a square matrix. Square matrix. Square matrix is nothing but, let us take one example first, then I'll come to the definition. Let's say matrix B 2, 3, 7, 5 and matrix D 2, 3, 5, 0, minus 7, 8, 0, 9, 8. Can you tell me the order of this matrix? Matrix B, order of this matrix B? 2 into 2. What is the order of matrix D? 3 into 3. See here, yes, 3 into 3. These two matrices are example for square matrix. Why? Because in a square matrix, where the number of rows is equal to number of columns. You can see here, right? The number of rows is equal to number of columns in the matrix B. In the matrix D also, number of rows is equal to number of columns. Then, what is the definition for the square matrix? Square matrix is a matrix in which where the number of rows are equal to number of columns. Square matrix is a matrix in which where there is a number of rows are equal to number of columns. Right? This is the definition of square matrix. Here, these are the two examples of square matrix. Matrix B, where there is a number of rows is equal to number of columns. Therefore, we can set to be this matrix as a square matrix. Square matrix D is also a square matrix because the number of rows is equal to number of columns. Right? ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರಾ definition ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರಾ? Let's move on to the second type of matrix, that is a row matrix. What is the meaning of row matrix? Here, row matrix is a matrix in which there is only one row with any number of columns. Matrix is a matrix in which there is only one row with any number of columns. Let us take an example. Matrix M. Here you can see 2, 9, minus 11, 0, 6, 7. See, what is the order of this matrix? One into 6. How many rows are here? Only one row. And 6 columns are here. If a matrix has only one row with any number of columns, that is said to be what? Row matrix. Right? So row matrix can be defined as what? A matrix in which where there is only one row with any number of columns are said to be a row matrix. This is an example for the row matrix. Are you all following? Yes, you have to. I'm explaining, right? Everything I have written it. Explaining as well as dictating, as well as I'm dictating. You have to write it in your notes also. And hmm, the sheet what I've written, I can send it to you. I'm going to send it in the Teach Me tab only. You can look into that. Okay. Is it okay? Have you understood the thing? What is the meaning of row matrix? Row matrix in which there is only one row with any number of columns. Let us move on to the third type of matrix, that is a column matrix. What is the definition for this column matrix? Anyway, you have defined a matrix, row matrix. Where there is only one row, we are going to consider row matrix. Then what would be the column matrix? Where there is only one column with any number of rows. That is said to be what? Column matrix. See, for example, n is equal to 8, 11, 19, 16, 21, 0, 9. See, what is the order of this matrix? Huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 rows are there. How many columns are there? Only one column. So this is the order of this matrix. 7 rows are there and one column. In this matrix, you can see only one column. Is it not? One column with any number of rows, right? Therefore, this particular matrix is said to be what? Column matrix. Column matrix is a matrix in which where there is only one column with any number of rows is called column matrix, right? Are you all following? ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿ? Okay. Let us move on to the fourth type of matrix. Fourth type of matrix is a diagonal matrix. See here, diagonal matrix is a square matrix in which all the principal diagonal elements must be, except all the principal diagonal matrix, all the other elements are going to be 0. First, let us take up an example, then we'll move on to the definition. Let us consider matrix P 5, 0, 0, 0, minus 1, 0, 0, 0, and 9. What is the order of this matrix? 3 into 3. If you wanted to call that particular matrix as a diagonal matrix, the very first condition, it should be a square matrix. It should be a square matrix. Is this a square matrix? Yes, it has satisfied the first condition. And the second condition is that these elements, see, these elements are considered as principal diagonal elements. Principal diagonal elements. Are you all following? 5 minus 1, 9. These elements are said to be what? Principal diagonal elements. Except these principal diagonal elements, all the other elements, it should be equal to what? It should be equal to 0. Except principal diagonal elements, all the other elements should be equal to 0. Should be equal to 0. Then if the matrix satisfies all these conditions, all the three conditions, then we can call this as a diagonal matrix. Are you all following what I am writing? ಯಾರಿಗಾದ್ರೂ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ? The students, those who are not able to understand, please let me know. Because it's an online class, I'll not be able to know whether you are getting or not. Simply I keep on explaining. See here, when we can call this as a diagonal matrix. Diagonal matrix means it must have to satisfy three important conditions. The very first condition is that it must be a square matrix. And except these principal diagonal matrix ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ನಂಬರ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. Except this principal diagonal matrix, all the other numbers must be equal to 0. All principal diagonal elements can be any number, but all the other elements must be equal to 0. Then we can call this as a diagonal matrix. Let me give other example. Let us consider matrix n 2 0 minus 1 0 3 0 0 0 1. Can I say this as a diagonal matrix? Why? See? Yes, here. Yes. Diagonal matrix means, yes, it's a 3 cross 3 square matrix. The first condition satisfied. Principal diagonal elements are there. Yes, even if it is instead of this 1, you can have 0 also. Right? 2 3 0. Yes, it is agreed. But all the other elements should be equal to 0. But here we have minus 1. Therefore, this is not the diagonal matrix. This is not going to be considered as a diagonal matrix. Right? Let us move on to the next type, that is unit or identity matrix. Unit or identity matrix. Here, let us say I is equal to 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1. What is the order of this matrix? 3 cross 3. If it is a 3 into 3, the very first condition is that it must be a square matrix. Right? And the second point is that all the principal diagonal elements must be equal to equal to 1. Right? And the other elements should be equal to 0. Other elements should be equal to 0. Right? Then and one more point you have to remember this here is that unit matrix or the identity matrix are always represented with the letter I only. Identity matrix is always represented with the help of capital letter I. You're not supposed to make use of any other letters for representing this identity matrix. You must have to make use of the capital letter I only to represent identity matrix. Right? See, when you are defining unit matrix or the identity matrix, here you have to remember the 4 different points are the criteria. The first thing is that it must be a square matrix and the principal diagonal elements. Here in the previous example, diagonal elements can be any number. If you wanted to say it as a unit matrix or the identity matrix, the principal diagonal elements must be equal to 1 only. It should not be any other number, right? It should not be any other number. It should be equal to 1 only. And all the other elements must be equal to 0. And last thing is that identity matrix must have to be represented with the help of capital letter I. Right? Are you all following? Okay. Shall we move on to the next type? Scalar matrix. Sixth one is that scalar matrix. Scalar matrix is a matrix in which all the diagonal elements are equal, right? So let us consider scalar matrix. S is equal to 10, 0, 0, 0, 10, 0, 0, 0, 10. See, this is a 3 cross 3 matrix. The first condition is that it should be a square matrix. Square matrix. Here, the principal diagonal elements can be any number other than 1. Other than 1. It can be 2, it can be 7, it can be minus 0, minus 11, whatever it may be. Right? Only the thing is it should be equal to each other. Right? And all the other elements must be equal to 0. Then we can call it as a scalar matrix. A scalar matrix is a square matrix in which the principal diagonal elements are equal to each other and all the other elements are equal to 0. Equal to 0. Right? For example, matrix X minus 7, 0, 0, 0, minus 7, 0, 0. Is this a scalar matrix? Is this a scalar matrix? Yes, it's a scalar matrix. Yes, it's a scalar matrix because here you can see the principal diagonal elements are equal to each other, but it is not equivalent to 1. 1 ಇದ್ರೆ unit matrix ಅಥವಾ identity matrix ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, right? Which is not equivalent to 1 and which is other than 1 minus 7 and all the other elements are equal to 0, right? Therefore, we are going to consider this as a scalar matrix. And let's move on to the next type, that is very easy matrix, that is null matrix. Null matrix or the zero matrix. Zero matrix always represents with the letter O. All the elements in a matrix is equal to null, zero. All the elements. Null matrix is a matrix in which there is all the elements are equal to zero. Null matrix is a matrix in which all the elements are equal to 0, and it must have to be represented with the letter O. It's a null matrix or the zero matrix. Are you all following? One matrix ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ 0 ಇದ್ರೆ that is null matrix, nothing more than that. And the symmetric matrix, before that let us learn about transpose of a matrix. Eighth type is that it's very, very important. This one, you must have to remember this. Transpose of a matrix. Transpose of a matrix may be obtained by changing the rows of a matrix into the columns. See here, matrix A is equal to 5, 4, 9, minus 11, 20, 30 is there, and 0, minus 1, minus 10. Right? Here, matrix A, I have taken up an example. If you wanted to have a transpose of a matrix, then you have to write A transpose. While writing A transpose of this matrix, the first row values, this is the first row value, right? First row values becomes a first column value in a transpose of a matrix. And the second row of values becomes a second column values. And the third row of this matrix becomes a third column values. Right? Therefore, this is a matrix which is transposed rows into columns. That particular matrix is said to be as what? Transpose of a matrix. Are you all following? When we can transpose of a matrix may be obtained by changing the rows of a matrix into columns. Transpose of a matrix can be obtained by changing the rows into columns. Are you all following? Rows values ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಕಾಲಮ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಿಬೇಕಷ್ಟೇ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ರೋ ಇದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ, ಅದನ್ನ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾಲಮ್. ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ರೋ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಕಾಲಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಿಬೇಕು. ಥರ್ಡ್ ರೋ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದದ್ದು ಥರ್ಡ್ ಕಾಲಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಿಬೇಕು. ಇನ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಪೋಸಿಂಗ್ ದ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಕ್ಸ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಸ್ by changing the rows values into the column values. Are you all following? So once you have transposed a matrix, then you have to write the value, the letter A ittalva, adana A transpose. You must have to write like this. Right? And the last one is that a symmetric matrix. Last type is that symmetric symmetric matrix. What is the symmetric matrix? Symmetric matrix is a square matrix which remains unchanged even when you have changed rows into columns. That is symmetric matrix. Let us consider matrix B. For example, 1, 3, 4, 3, 4, 6, 4, 6, 2. See here, it's a square matrix, right? It's a square matrix. And in the second step, we are going to consider a B transpose. Transpose of a matrix. Once you are considering B transpose, how you are going to write? Tell me the first row values becomes first column values, right? You just look into this first row values 1, 3, 4. It becomes first column values. And second row values becomes second column values 3, 4, 6. And third row values becomes third column values. See, even after transposing the values, the matrix remains unchanged. Is it not? Look at B values 1, 3, 4, 3, 4, 6, 4, 6, 2. B transpose is also 1, 3, 4, 3, 4, 6, 4, 6, 2. Is there any changes to the B matrix as well as B transpose matrix? Can you hear me? Is there any changes? No changes. After transposing the matrix also, there will be no change in the matrix. That particular matrix is said to be what? Symmetric matrix. So, symmetric matrix is a matrix in which after transposing a matrix also, there will be, after changing, it remains unchanged even after the transpose of a matrix, right? So, what is the definition for this? Symmetric matrix is a square matrix. Definition: symmetric matrix is a square matrix. It remains unchanged. It remains unchanged even after transpose of a matrix, even after transpose of a matrix. That is the definition of symmetric matrix, right? Is there anything to be asked? Till now, we have discussed all the types of matrices, matrix number 1 to till 9, right? Shall we have a recap? Quick recap. Square matrix we have discussed. Is there anything to be asked? Is it clear? We have discussed a row matrix. Column matrix also we have discussed. Diagonal matrix is the fourth type of matrix. Yeah, Haley. ಯಾವುದು? Square matrix and row matrix. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿಲ್ವಾ? Okay. Square matrix in which where there is a number of rows is equal to number of columns. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ, matrix B is a square matrix because number of rows is equal to number of columns. 2 cross 2. Matrix D is also a square matrix where there is a number of rows is equal to number of columns. 3 is equal to 3. Order of the matrix ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಎರಡು ನಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ ರೋಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ ಕಾಲಮ್ಸ್ ಎರಡು ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಸೇಮ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ then that is considered as what? Square matrix, right? And the second one is row matrix. Row matrix in which matrix in where there is only one row with any number of columns. This is example. Here we have only one row with 6 columns, right? This particular matrix can be considered as a row matrix. Row matrix means a matrix consists of only one row with any number of columns. That is considered as a column matrix, right? Column matrix ಗೊತ್ತಾ? one column ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಎಷ್ಟಾದ್ರೂ rows ಇರ್ಬೋದು. Thank you. ಬೇರೆ ಇನ್ಯಾರಿಗಾದ್ರೂ ಡೌಟ್ ಇದೆಯಾ? Okay. In tomorrow's class, we are going to do a problems on matrices, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, everything we are going to do from tomorrow onwards. ನಾಳೆಯಿಂದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ. ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಇದು? ಹೇಳಪ್ಪ. ಯಾರು ಮಾತಾಡೋದು? ಯಾರು ಕರೆದಿದ್ದು ಮ್ಯಾಮ್ ಅಂತ? ಹರ್ಷಿತಾನಾ? ಯಾರಿಗಂದ್ರೂ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇದೆಯಾ? Shall we end the session? Okay. ನಾಳೆ ನಾನು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಲ್ಲ. ನಾಳೆ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ. ನೀವು ಡಿ ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ನಾಳೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ತೀನಿ ನಿಮಗೆ. ನಾಳೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಶೆಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಹಾಕ್ತೀನಿ, ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿ. ಟೀಚ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ? ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ? ಓಕೆ. ಈಗ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿ. ಫೋಟೋ ತೆಗೆದು ಕಳಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಗ್ರೂಪಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳಿಸಲ್ಲ, ಟೀಚ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆ್ಯಪಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳಿಸ್ತೀನಿ, ನೋಟ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ. ಓಕೆ. Okay, I'm going to end the session now. See you. See you tomorrow. Okay, bye. Bye.